thinking about all these extraordinary multi-million-dollar projects, concerned about the efficiency of construction in the Bahamas? Pause, think about it with intentional thought, and stay tuned as we hear from Judson Wilmott as we talk about this construction industry and how we can make it more efficient to become better.
Something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. What we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative, 242.
Welcome back to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. And as I said before, we're here with Judson Wilmott. And we're making our second attempt at this because this is just so much goodies that we have to offer tonight that Murphy tried to get in the way and throw us all kind of smoke screen and curveball and this and that to try to strike us out. But, can't keep good people down. And we got this maestro here from a lot of knowledge on the table that he's going to share with us today. So welcome, Judson. How you doing?
Good evening, Dale. It's certainly a pleasure to convene with you again. Just looking forward to an interactive conversation, and I will do my best to share and to answer any questions you may have.
Awesome. After last week, I got so many calls from people saying, where's the post? Where's the post? We was liking that when they disappear, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So you, I don't know, you got some magnetism out there that is flying around that people want to hear what you got to say. So you must be poked right there. But well, Judson, tell us a little bit about you before we get started, just so that people have an understanding of from when your knowledge is coming.
Well, Dale, I grew up in a construction family, actually. My father was a brick mason, hailed from Andros. I am a part of the Coakley and the Cargill family from Calabash Bay, Andros. Mm-hmm. All of my brothers and my uncles and everybody is in the construction industry. And so I ended up getting an opportunity to go off to school, study construction engineering at Iowa State University. And the rest is history. Mm-hmm. So I guess you can call me a construction engineer. And I love the industry very much.
Awesome. Well, something to think about, to put this in perspective of our talks today, we're always talking about construction as to what something to think about is about. And we keep talking about the new built environment. And, that's an environment that we say is needed in order to create sustainability for our people in the Bahamas and create an environment where we could continue and our economy should grow to at least $100 billion. And I believe construction is a major part, or could be a major part, of that industry. And so those things are built on sun, sand, sea, digital, and people. And sun, we looked at that from a point of view of natural resources, renewables, and stuff. That's what the sun is. It's not the traditional sun as we know about sun, sand, and sea. Typical. The sand would be our native foods and bush medicines and all those things that come from the ground. And then the sea would be our vast marine safari with the sharks and mangroves and all those flats and stuff that Brother Preston, Captain Smith knows down there in Anderson, your hometown, and what have you do. I find we could make all of these industries and light industries can come out of those. And obviously digital is just going crazy with AI coming along stronger right now. That's going to be a bigger business. But, people are what makes this thing tick the most. And so with those things, we are unique. And I believe that we can't compare ourselves to other people, but we can compare ourselves to our own potential. And I think you will share a lot as to what we have the potential to do. So let's start off by talking about the focus on the traditional construction industry, and then we'll phase into what people might not be familiar with. And so let's define what is construction to start with.
Well, construction is a bellwether industry. It leads many economies. It's an economic catalyst. It has many different components, some of which are tied to, firstly, engineering, architecture, that aspect, that cost center of construction, environmental, geotechnical, the planning, the pre-project development, the scheduling of the project, all of those items which make up those aspects that are necessary to give a cost for construction product. And then we move from that to the procurement aspect of construction. And the procurement aspect involves the zincs, the countertops, the furnitures, the carpet, the tiles, and all of the various things that go into the building and that are necessary to construct the building, even down to the beds, refrigerator, the sand, just about every aspect, the shipping, all of those pieces make up what we call procurement, which is a second cost center for production. And then we have the third piece, which is what we typically speak about when we talk about construction. And that entails the site work, the aspect of the equipment on the project, the crane, the bulldozer, the tractor, all of the various equipment that are necessary to construct the work, the labor, the management, the project management, all of those aspects at the site, which we see and we think about when we speak about construction in the Bahamas. And then there's the fourth piece of construction, which is the aspect of construction that is involved when the facility is already open and has been constructed. But there is an aspect called operation and maintenance, preventative maintenance, predictive maintenance. Those also fall under the category of construction activities. And then we have, in addition to those aspects, the E, P, C, and O, which make up the total dollar cost of delivering a project, delivering a product for the owner. We have different types of construction. We have building construction. We have heavy highway construction, marine construction, environmental construction, industrial construction. And then you can put them into two broad categories: horizontal construction and vertical construction. These are major aspects of the construction product. It involves politics, it involves law, it involves education, it involves engineering, it involves architecture, it involves philanthropy, many aspects of the construction environment that contribute to technology, innovation, and the provision of a product that we can use to enjoy our lives. So it's a dynamic industry that it's taken for granted. At this point, in my view, it needs governance, it needs accountability, and it needs a structure to protect the interests of the Bahamians. I believe that in the construction industry, Bahamian craftsmen, Bahamian construction workers, Bahamian architects, Bahamian engineers, Bahamian basic construction tradespersons, equipment operators, project managers, these are some of our most prized components of our industry, and we have some of the best in the world. In some ways, because Bahamians have not really found a way to control the industry in the way they should. We find that Bahamians have been marginalized and they're not benefiting in the way that they should be benefiting in the industry. It's
Yeah, so
very sad part of our industry.
we can drill into some of those points as we go. But Judson, if you could just adjust your camera because it is gone more to the ceiling, and I don't think people want to see the lights; they want to see you. You know.
Can you see me now?
Yeah, I can see you. Yes, very much so.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. So, you know, we're sponsored by Dev Enterprises and Paget Investments. And so, folks, if you want to join those and send your questions online and post them, and we will try to mix them in and answer as many as we can, because we know a lot of you are calling me and WhatsApping me and whatever you to say, when is Judson coming back? When is Judson coming back? We got plenty of things we want to hear about. So you tell us what you want to hear about, and Judson will speak to them. And if I have anything to offer, I'll throw a little piece here and there, but you know. But let's start now, Judson, about some of the myths about construction and why we have in the Bahamas, we always paint the story that the Bahamas construction is booming. But I don't know if we really see that in the pockets of the Bahamian people. So what is that a myth, or is that?
Well, Dave, in fact, construction is actually booming in terms of our population size. We have a tremendous amount of physical construction going on. The question is, are these construction activities benefiting Bahamians in the way that they should be benefiting? We have many countries, for instance, Dave, that have less population than the Bahamas, for instance. And their construction spending, whether it's direct Bahamian spending or funds coming in from abroad, these construction activities in the Bahamas, as compared to our population, are huge. But is it trickling down to the pockets of Bahamian vendors, Bahamian stores that sell products? Is it trickling down to the workers? Are workers being paid in the way they should be? I believe that we are not properly paying our construction workers. I believe that the industry operates in such a way where the profits are very huge, and it is in some way unfair to the construction worker. Workers make a tremendous amount of.
So what kind of money we talking about here as construction in the Bahamas? We talking about in the millions, the billions, what we talking about?
You're talking about the billions of dollars. Take, for instance, and I'll throw in a simple example to be somewhat provocative.
Okay.
In this industry, throughout the Bahamas, right now on this island, whether it's in Paradise Island, it's in Albany, it's in Cable Beach, Love Beach, Baker's Bay, Winding Bay, Cotton Bay, whatever major construction project is going on in Long Island or wherever it may be. And you look at the expatriate component, using Nassau or New Providence as an example, for the participation of those expatriate workers in the construction industry. They drive better cars. They live in better communities, pay astronomical amount of rent. They, if you check the wiring of their funds that are expatriate, that are shipped out of the
way,
you'll see that that's a significant amount of money they save. They live really well. And look at the Bahamian workers, the Bahamian project managers, the people that are of this Bahamas that are participating in the industry. They don't live in these particular areas. They don't pay the $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month rent. They don't get all of the bonuses. So I think we are at a point where we now have to figure out how to share the pie, the construction pie, so that Bahamians can benefit in a proper way. We have to pay them properly. We have to create environments for them to be properly trained. We have to give them respect. I find that in many instances, we're disrespected. And so we have to figure out how to address that major concern. Additionally, when you look at construction, it's an integrated industry. It involves lawyers, it involves bankers, it involves insurance companies, just about every aspect. It involves politicians, public servants, it involves workers, schools. This is an integrated industry.
Mm-hmm.
It is a driver for our economy. Is it really helping us in the way that it should? Are we importing materials in such a way that we're bypassing local industries and local companies that are set up to procure and to assist and to develop and to grow the industry? These are some questions that, in my view, need an answer.
Yeah.
The other thing about the industry, and this is something that I've investigated in the last 2 to 3 years and noticed, and I'm willing to defend it against anyone that wants to challenge me on it. Our industry is inflated.
Wow.
Consumer is, in my view, not getting a fair price for the construction product
Yeah, the value. Mm-hmm.
that they are paying for. The costs are too high in some ways. The profits are too astronomical in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
We have to figure out a way that to bring our construction cost in line with sensible expectations. The only thing that we have, take for instance, Abou or some of the places that were affected or impacted by Hurricane Dorian
Mm-hmm.
and other catastrophic events. You go and you purchase product from abroad. There's no duty on the product. The only thing in some way is the shipping to get the product here. And then when you look at the cost of the material, the cost of the labor, the cost of the end product, it's really high. And again, I reiterate, it's very unfair to the consumers.
Mm-hmm. So when we look at that, then we could say that if we're talking about billion-dollar industry functioning now, like what percentage of that is actually touching the pockets of the Bahamian people through the workers, etc., that you called off just now, all the insurance, to this, to that, and what have you? Is it a myth? Is it the myth that we are actually benefiting, that it's driving our economy? Is one of the big drivers. I know it could be a driver, but when we look at the real touch point as to what we're benefiting from it, is it one of the major contributors?
Well, it is contributing, but in my professional view, it is not contributing in the way that creates economic growth.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Based on the total dollars being spent in the country. What I see, Dale, on paper, you see a product, someone will charge you 200, 300, 400 million for it. And when you drill down in there and see what really are the major components of the product,
right,
of the project, and you start looking from division 0 down to division whatever it may be,
right, mm-hmm.
in the construction divisions, you find that the real costs in some instances could be 30, 40% less than what it should be. In many of the major projects, companies would come into the Bahamas, for instance, to perform an investment, and they would hire some companies to perform those work. And what you find in the case of Albany, in the case of the wind project and some of the major projects, the developers themselves, the owners themselves, the master developer says, we're not going to hire these contractors anymore because the product cost is so inflated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad because in my view, it's dampening the growth of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that we need to fix. Some of the major components of the industry are cement blocks, are sand, are rock, These aspects of our industry, in my view, are controlled by too few of the players, and the cost of these products are dictated, in my professional view, in a way that does not lend itself to competitive pricing.
Mm-hmm.
And what you find is that some of the major products necessary to construct your facility are dominated by certain categories of the industry,
Right.
companies, which dictate the price to the
Yeah.
extent that people want to go to Dominican Republic to get cement. They want to figure out a way to try to bring block from outside of the Bahamas,
Mm-hmm.
and other aspects of the construction industry
Mm-hmm.
where the costs are just too high,
Yeah.
and they're very discouraging for people that are intending to try to make
Yeah.
it.
So when we look at that, then really and truly, we are to coin something, and not to be political or anything about it, but the way the construction industry is operating now is similar to when we had Burma Road riot then, in terms of the foreign element and the local element having a huge disparity in benefit from the same work. But on that, so then tell us some of the truths about where the Bahamas or the Bahamian people can actually tap into those 4 stages you mentioned to cause there to be more of a balance. What should we be focusing on?
Well, first of all, we have to have governments that have an appetite to truly empower Bahamians, give Bahamians an opportunity, and to give them a helping hand, where in some ways they have good ideas, they don't have all the resources, but you need to give them an opportunity to prove themselves,
Right.
so that they can compete. Okay. The same way that persons were in the downtown area in one time,
Mm-hmm.
they were able to move from there to Awaki, set up shop there on public land,
Right.
in such a way that they can have economic power controlled and what have you. These are some of the similar opportunities that should be given to ordinary Bahamians,
Mm-hmm.
not on the basis of political persuasion,
Right.
but just on the basis of their desire and their competency to create opportunities for other Bahamians. Bahamians just want access,
Right.
unfettered access to be able to follow the law and to produce and create opportunities for themselves and their families.
So if we look at those 4 again, and you talk about procurement and the rest and stuff, you mentioned on one of those quarters, you said where the Bahamians seem to be major participants, and that was yielding a small reward. So in the other areas, whether it's procurement or it's the design or whatever parts it was that you was mentioning, what do we need in order to tap into that? You said the government need to provide the framework, but besides that, from the actual community, what is needed?
Well, certainly when I mentioned government providing the framework, I'm not asking for government to give anybody a handout.
Right. Yeah.
We have laws, and we need opportunities where you can go in a reasonable length of time to apply to do something and get the permission to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to amass the various licenses and requirements in a reasonable length of time,
Mm-hmm.
so you can get to conduct business and be a competitive person in the industry.
Right.
Some people never get that opportunity.
Yeah.
Some people do get that opportunity.
So folks, you're watching Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles, and we're here with Judson Wilmott, and we're talking about the construction industry and how we could make it more efficient for our domestic Bahamian people to be able to tap into that and get some of this couple $1 billion that is happening and floating around in that industry. And here Judson mentioned 4 areas, and I think when we come back now, we're going to touch on maybe the procurement and some of the opportunities as to where specifically Bahamians could tap into. Because I'm stroking the pen now because I'm the Prime Minister of the Bahamas and his cabinet, and we already created the framework, and we know that it's only a matter of whether the people have the will and the desire to spend the money, because money is no longer a problem either. The banks or whoever is already financing this. So we're going to have that discussion, Judson and Madam Producer. Folks, don't forget to ask your questions, and we'll be right back.
Something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. What we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative, 242.
Welcome back to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. You know, things keep going the way it goes around these times and thing about, but you know, we can get it floating now because Microsoft is really doing us some injustice here. But we really want to now, Judson, to tap into we talked about the framework and what's happening in the industry today. But to me, there can't be billions and billions of dollars in this industry and Bahamians not tapping into it. So we want you to help us to understand now, if the government makes this policy framework for us to be able to see it, then does this require also structural changes in the way Ministry of Works function?
Well, certainly the Ministry of Works is at a point in our history where it needs, in my professional opinion, to be restructured so that the project delivery framework of the Ministry of Works becomes efficient and responsive to the needs of our growing environments and be able to deliver those services to Bahamian investors, contractors, and the customers of the ministry, so that the investments that have been made by the risk takers, by the people that are hoping and wishing for a better life, so that their investments are not threatened by slow responses, unnecessary costs and delays, the provision of affordable services related to electricity, the ability to provide proper sidewalks and roadways that can aid in proper movement of not just vehicles, but pedestrians. They're just as important as the middle of the road where the cars are traveling.
Right.
There's a need to ensure that we place port facilities at strategic locations, such as Morgan's Bluff, Andros, Abaco, aspects of our northern Bahamas, western Grand Bahama, that create opportunities for enterprising Bahamians who have an interest in developing the southern and central islands of the Bahamas beyond New Providence, such that they can bring goods and products into those particular locations and create new supply chains to deliver products to those various family islands, timely way, and in a way that removes the inflated costs, whether it's for fuel, whether it's for cement, whether it's for lumber, whether it's for furniture or whatever it may be. If I had the pen, it could happen in Andros or West End or somewhere. We cannot create of Bahamas, where, in my opinion, Bahamian entrepreneurs who are actively trying to grow the Bahamas, okay, who are trying to create opportunities in the areas of products related to construction
Mm-hmm.
or even food, have to bring those products to the main port here in Nassau
Mm-hmm.
or the port in Grand Bahama, where in the case of Grand Bahama, that is a foreign-owned port, and they are reaping fees off of Bahamian transactions. And if I had my way, in some way the government would be encouraged to create an active, efficient, and proper operating port to bring goods into this country and distribute them in such a way that it could bring the cost of these products down.
So if somebody wanted to go into a Morgan Bluff example, that process, does the ministry works out to change that process? But we've had what's his name? Who's been up in Washington for a period of time, and the system there doesn't deal with all of this backward and forth RFTs to the way we do RFTs and the request for tenders, etc. To do all these things. What he explained was that there was this like consortium of owners, workers of the industry who was approaching those things to cause them to then be able to go forward and govern themselves without even having a politician or like involved in that. Monty Pratt is the maestro that I'm thinking about, the brilliant mind.
Well, Dale, there are some things in my view that are government responsibilities.
Okay.
The port facilities are one of those. And in my view, they should remain under some form of government administration and structure. They can partner and join in with other.
Right. I understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
But we need to take, for instance, a place like Morgan's Bluff and fix it up properly. Government collect taxes, and the taxes could be used to set up a proper facility there so that boats could come in. Okay. And from there, they can distribute logistical operations, etc., storage, warehouses, other things, and then distribute those goods in a smaller fashion as compared to some of the major ports in Grand Bahama or even Port Nassau, and ship goods throughout the Bahamas in a more affordable way.
Right.
Right now, the costs are just too high.
Yeah. So the general cost of living in the Bahamas will go down because of that. If you have more competition, the prices normally become more receptive or favorable for the customers. But so when we look at that, then how then will Bahamians, either in the industry, be able to cause that to happen? You mentioned the public partnership. How do the people go about causing that structural change to happen?
Well, in most of these things, there's something called project finance.
Mm-hmm.
Project finance is not corporate finance. Project finance is designing a cash flow and assembling a set of contracts where all the responsibilities are clearly and properly defined. And in most of these infrastructure type activities, they are handled through the project finance structure rather than the corporate finance where government or some private entity have to put their hands in their pocket and then take a risk without having a clear picture as to what the cash flow for these investments or these activities.
Right.
So I could see us setting up systems to allow for participation by Bahamians. We have a lot of very smart Bahamians who would team together. They just need a license, and they need access. They need timely response. We have to get responses in a way that takes away the baiting that we as Bahamians experience when we're doing business.
Yeah. So that's ports, and we know that's going to be contentious. But so when we look at roads and airports and the like, my family is huge in that business over multiple thousand years, but they're not major players in my view, because there seem to be other people who come along to become bigger players in the industry, even though they might have been around for more than my lifetime. So
when you look at roads, it's the same thing no matter what form of construction it is. You have the materials. Let's look at the materials. The rock. How diversified is the supply of rock within the Bahamas? Well, we export rock. I mean, they dig it up and they export it out of the country.
Yeah.
And then we have sand. It's also a part of road construction. The only aspect of it that is imported pretty much is the asphaltic component, what we call the tar.
The top.
But all the basic products, the other products, well, the equipment is imported as well.
Right.
But you know, if I had my way, we would be building all of our roads using concrete. They last longer, better life cycle costs. Eventually, much easier to repair. You can take them up in sections. Most of the major roadways in many of the big cities around the world, in the modern world, are concrete. And all of the products that are required to construct our roads are right here in the Bahamas. And if we transcend to building concrete roads, and I've looked at this before, I think we would be in a better position to drive the cost of construction down, and then eventually transcend to lower cost of construction materials, such as the concrete blocks that we use to build our homes. We can now begin to build our parking lots and other aspects of surface construction using concrete. And why is this important, Dale? More than anything else, is because it involves more hand labor.
Okay. I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
More hand labor, which is better for our economy, better for our trades. Virtually all of the product, including the water that mixed the concrete, is right here in the Bahamas. Eventually, it would cut down on importation of the asphalt, thereby saving dollars.
Right.
And I mean, we have such an abundance of material within this country. And, you know, we have a government. After government will come and tell Bahamian persons that own land, they can't mine rock or sand or whatever. Because I can show you, Dale, right there in Grand Bahama, right there in this island, you can actually, from the hills that we have, you can mine your own sand, mine your own rock, mine your own 3/8, 3/4 rock, and it's much cheaper than what we pay in bringing the rock from Grand Bahama. And I put my head on the cutting board that the same rock that comes this way to New Providence and elsewhere in the Bahamas, as compared to the same rock that they would ship and export out of the country, the rock coming to the Bahamians, I'm willing to wager, is much more costly than the one they're exporting out of the country.
Wow.
And so before I would shut down any mining facility anywhere, I would ensure that cut back on the exports. It's not benefiting us. The rocks going out of the country, building roads in other places.
So we add energy to that, because I mean, energy is a major part too. These are things that all are eating up our GDP or cash flow in the country. And earlier this morning, I got a comment on one of our posts from an astute, intelligent person, and they were saying the construction industry basically, at least this is my interpretation of what was said, that the construction industry basically is only producing low growth jobs. And so my goal is to find ways that we could have us tapped into these much bigger. So if we were to make these changes that you're talking about, what percentage of the total profits would be more likely to stay here? Because people normally think that if we reduce costs, profits going to drop. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the case.
Well, certainly energy is it's a big monster, and it has various pieces that you have to look at. The provision of energy in our country, in my opinion, currently is obsolete. In particular, the Family Islands, very substandard in terms of what it ought to be. New Providence, there's hope, but it's still a hodgepodge circus of trying to provide proper energy to this particular island. When you look at energy, there are three primary areas that we must consider: the availability of energy, the reliability of energy, and thirdly, the efficiency of energy. And you must ask yourself, how are we performing in those areas? In the Bahamas in particular, based on data that I have researched, we produce approximately 1.8 billion kilowatts of electricity annually within our country. New Providence Island produces approximately 1.5 billion kilowatts of electricity annually. From the 1st of January at 12 o'clock to the end of December 31st at midnight, we produce approximately 1.5 billion in New Providence. All of the other islands except Grand Bahama and Spanish Wells,
the 0.4
produce about 300 million kilowatts of electricity. And how do you transfer from that 1.8 billion kilowatts to what you see on your bill? What that means is this, Dale. For every 1 penny that all of the consumers in this country pay to BPL for energy. So if you're paying 1 cent a kilowatt hour, and we all pay our 1 cent
right
in 1 year, when BPL opens its cash register, it will see $18 million for that 1 cent
right
that we charge. And so you take that and you transpose it to any number. So what that means is, in 1 year, if they produce 1.8 billion kilowatts and they're charging us as consumers 40 cents per kilowatt hour, what that means is that takes 40 cents as 0.4 times 1.8. That's quite a bit of money.
Mm-hmm.
Do the math. 1.8 billion times 40 cents. That's how much money goes into their cash register annually.
Yeah, that's the top end. Yeah,
So that's what they have to work with.
right.
Now,
So then they cut all the costs. So.
how do we improve that? How do we cause ourselves to get the same amount of electricity without increasing the cost and reducing the cost? That is doable. That is definitely doable. Most of us look at, and all of this ties to construction, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Most of us look at it as, well, we need solar. Okay. Well, we need wind. Okay. These are all renewables, but they're very unstable. And so no matter what we do, we still have to have those fossil fuel driven equipment. And so what most modern countries do, and in the case of New Providence, they are large enough to do the same as they would do in Florida and elsewhere. They put in place what we call combined cycle power plants, where they collect the steam
Mm-hmm.
and they produce up to 30% or even in some cases more of the same energy, electricity from that steam, thereby getting free gas, what we call it.
Right, right.
And so as you look towards energy in terms of where we're going, while everybody is bantering over renewables and solar and all these other stuff, I'm going to introduce something new here today. And it's called fuel cells.
Mm-hmm.
And I urge most Bahamians to take a look at it because that's where the world is going. And I think the US Treasury and the United States considers fuel cells to be renewables because of the low emissions or virtually zero emissions, as well as you can get your carbon credits and others from
it. Okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it's a new buzzword, and I'm encouraging all of the listeners, if they're out there, to look it up. But let me tell you why it's important. Fuel cells, in my professional opinion, is something that can rescue the Bahamas and give the Bahamas an answer to its inability to provide affordable, reliable, and available energy to our family islands, thereby causing residents of those islands and investors in those islands to have reliable power.
Mm-hmm.
How does a fuel cell work? If I'm building a $300 million facility deal in Long Island, for instance, I can take a fuel cell if I'm needing 20 megawatts or 15 megawatts or 10 megawatts. I can put a fuel cell within 500 yards in close proximity to the new invested facility, the $300 million facility. And guess what happens when I put the fuel cell there? I can send electricity from the fuel cell to the resort and at the same time send electricity to the grid. Why are these fuel cells important? Because they have a 99.999999% availability factor. Fuel cells are used by Google and many of the large data storage and processing centers all over the world. It's where the world is going because of its reliability. How do they work? The fuel cells receive natural gas, what we call LNG, and it splits the LNG, takes the hydrogen and produces electricity with it. And then the carbon is collected and placed into the same bullet or cell that brought the LNG.
LNG, okay.
And you can export it, get your carbon credit, earn revenue from that, or you can make dry ice from it. You can also take the same carbon and sell it to the brewery or the Coca-Cola and generate additional revenue. That's the way the world is going.
Oh.
Read upon the fuel cells.
Okay, will do. So what we also need to do though is understand when we do all of that, what will be the cost savings globally when we look at or the benefit to the people, to the community. Because I mean, construction offers all of these environments that we can have. So how do we then get it to go so that savings, we could now turn that over to do something else with that money? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah.
Well, when you create savings, then the government has monies, the consumers, the population has money to spend. We can then build better schools. We can build better hospitals, clinics, and roadway. We can cut down on the national debt. We don't have to raise so many taxes. So these efficiencies related to energy causes growth in our economy and then allows for the government to provide relief rather than to put pressure on the taxpayers, which I think is very important. Are you there, Dale?
All right.
He lost you for a minute, huh?
Yeah. These things, man, all these things need to change. But I think you would have still been online if you were continuing to talk. So you were finished with that point, or are you still?
Well, no, I just wanted to say that, I'm urging the Bahamas. I mean, we've had this big buzz about solar for so many months, years.
Right.
The difference is that fuel cells are renewables, and we can achieve our renewable goals using fuel cells.
Mhm.
Here's why. They operate 24 hours as compared to solar. Solar operates, 8 hours a day maybe? But fuel cells are base load. They can operate in 24 hours. They are also, because of their proximity to a resort or some factory, some data center that we can encourage now to come to the Bahamas using fuel cells, they allow for relationships with the private sector and the power company to promote an opportunity where the government does not have to finance or to back those transactions, which frees up the power company to conduct commercial business without the need for a sovereign guarantee. There's a way to do that. And I see that as an opportunity waiting to happen.
Okay. So when we look at all of this now, Judson, then how do we need a mental paradigm shift in order to cause all of this to happen? Because we went from the traditional construction that people know, building a house, maybe an office and stuff like that, and we start talking about areas that people don't normally consider to be construction. And you have many more things. You have bridges and all kind of stuff that could be put on the table. And also how we could save the construction of power plants and the rest of those to happen. So do we need a mental shift as a country so that we could tap into these benefits?
Well, I would say the answer to that question, Dale, is yes. But also, we need access. We need access to finance and institutions that are operating in the country.
Mm-hmm.
We need access to government privilege such that when we as citizens apply for these opportunities, that we have unfettered access without favor to get the opportunity to conduct our business. I think that to me is one of the most frustrating things that Bahamians experience. I've in recent time gone to certain government agencies and I've seen personally some of the frustration that Bahamian consumers experience. And I think that the Bahamian business people in the construction industry require better service from the institutions that they rely on.
Yeah. So does that access mean that we have to restrict or limit the foreign element that you talked about or anything else? Or is it just mean that it will now open the door to, it's not charging, to for Bahamians?
Well, I think we need a very competitive environment because it needs to be there to keep Bahamians and themselves honest and not to be so anxious to earn such a great profit in a short period of time.
Right.
But the playing field in some ways need to be more level because without that level playing field, it's going to be very difficult for Bahamians to grow their business,
right,
and to thrive in their business environments. I mean, you can go and look for an opportunity, but you just don't get that chance. It's almost like before you even arrive, you know you're not going to get that opportunity. And so it's sort of very.
But we got to think beyond that now. We thinking positive that we're going to be able to cause this mental change so these things could happen. So we just want to help the people understand what they can tap into, there's a wealth of money sitting in this country that is sitting on the side, and then it might be sitting on the side because of these same reasons that you mentioned, the restrictions or obstacles or whatever you. But we need to get this money flowing in our economy.
Well, in many transactions, taking a look at it from a project finance perspective, what you see is you think a lot of people have a lot of money, but all it really is somebody holding a contract or some agreement that gives them a right to do something. And then they use that to leverage to transact business. And the absence of that paper into the hand of the ordinary Bahamian is, in my view, an impediment. You can take some guy that just arrived into this country with nothing, and he has a piece of paper because he got access, he got a piece of paper, and all of a sudden he's the big man around here doing all kind of business because he had that piece of paper.
Right.
He could trade to get access to capital. because he had a guaranteed opportunity where he could look and say, okay, I have this document and this right for 10 years or 15 years. Here's my cash flow. And he can make things happen. But how do Bahamians get that opportunity?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. But I mean, it's just something that we have to figure out how to do. And if we got enough people dealing with it, then we can happen. So Justin, let's put it all together now and tell us something before we go that you want the people to know that we haven't spoken about so far.
Well, I want the Bahamian people to understand that construction is a bellwether industry. It involves many aspects of our lives. And it's more than just a fellow with a piece of tool in his hand. And so, as an industry, currently, the government is contemplating appointing a construction board. In my opinion, it is something that is long overdue, so that the experts in the industry can govern themselves, can create education for their members, and create an environment to protect the interests of the people that rely on them to build structures for them. What we need is an environment that gives free, unfettered access to Bahamian construction professionals so that they can thrive in this industry.
Mm.
And that's all I can say, Dale. As we look ahead, there are many opportunities in this industry. We just need a bigger piece of the pie, and we need access. We need access to jobs. We need access to good contracts. We need access to affordable supplies and materials. I think we need to have ports that Bahamian business people, in particular contractors, can bring their products to in an affordable way. For instance, if you can clear your goods in Andros or somewhere else, you can break it down into smaller categories and ship them into the various family islands, ship them into Nassau. You can save money, and then you can pass those savings on to the consumers. I think the current Ministry of Works is doing a good job at this point, but there's room for improvement to improve our industry.
Mm-hmm.
And my encouragement at this point is to say to the government, it is time now to appoint a contractors board so that the construction industry can govern itself and protect its interests, so that construction and its benefits can be passed on to the citizens of the Bahamas.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to those things materializing and having a lot of conversation spun off of the show in that area so that we could get as much feedback as we can, because, I've always been told that, the most optimized systems are those that have the variety or diversity of feedback. And if you don't have feedback, then nothing happens. And so you need to have the designers, which will be your thought, people who can be functioning in the area, the rest of the contractors, the government, the stakeholders, and people who just observing and using the system. People like the average person out there who's trying to build a house or this or that and stuff like that. So we really, go ahead.
One last point, Dale, is I think also we need to encourage the banks within the Bahamas to work with the industry in a much better way, so that things can be done in a more constructive manner where the homeowners, the contractors, and the banks are working in such a way to protect the interests of the homeowners.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we just got to build it back. $1 billion, $100 billion. We're not far from that. When we consider if you take 100 different industries, that's only $1 billion each, and we could have that 100 billion. So we're there. Next 50, done. We're $100 billion economy, and the social issues and all those things will start to filtrate out of the system, as long as we have discipline as we go. So Judson, we really like to thank you for taking the time to share the knowledge that you have. Appreciate and apologize for last week and the systems crashing left, right, and center around us. But I think people would have benefited from what you had to say, and if they really like it, then they could hit the like on the show, and they can also share. Because we don't take the shows down, we leave them up so they could be an educational system or tool for people. However, and Judson, you're always welcome to use the shows for your purposes also, and so we welcome that all. So folks out there in social media, my people up there in Canada and the United States and over the pond down there in Ghana, etc. Ubuntu, we love you all, and so we look forward to seeing you next week at the same time, but on Tuesday, not Wednesday. We made an adjustment, but we're back to our usual time. And so thank you, Judson, and we look forward to many more of your initiatives becoming materialized for the benefit of this country. And as we celebrate the 50th anniversary, let's move this in the next 50 to the tippity top. Madam Producer, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dale.
Welcome.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change